the first time. Just a quick review. This is our webinar series. We average doing these about every other week. We started these in early 2020, kind of as a response to the pandemic, as a way to stay connected. Organizationally, the WhyTry organization, it's about 20 years old, and we've got an incredible network of friends that we feel really grateful to be connected to, people that are really talented, people that have done amazing things. And when the pandemic hit, the first thing we realized we needed to maintain was that connection with our friends and with our network and with our community. And the webinars was a way to do that. And they pretty quickly took on a life of their own. We've done well over 100 of these now, and we continue to bring in guests with great perspective, great experience, and great ideas. And today is no exception. Although I can't really call Corey a guest. I mean, Corey's part of the WhyTry family. So anyway, with that, let's let me introduce. So I mentioned the topic. We're going to be talking about student connection and a little bit about the power of relationships today. By way of introduction, let me tell you who we have with us today. And to do that, I'm going to actually spotlight both of us. Before I introduce formally our guest, our panelist, I do want to make one request that so we really like to use the chat, and we love it when the chat is active and you're sharing ideas with one another and you're commenting. It does bring, I think, a little more value to the chat tool if you are willing to make the adjustment in your chat settings so you're sharing your comment with everybody. And the easiest way to do that is just right above where you type a message in the chat. It says to, and there's a little drop down menu, and you can send your message either to everyone or just to the host and panelists. If it says host and panelists right now and you type a message, Corey and I are the only ones that can see it. If you'll adjust that to everyone, I think it brings a nice element of engagement to the chat. So go ahead and make that adjustment. After you make that adjustment, just type in a hello, a good morning, a good afternoon, some type of greetings in there. And we'll start off by lighting up the chat with your welcomes. And then I will welcome you all as well. Thank you for tuning in. We've got people coast to coast. We've got people from Canada. I believe I saw from Hawaii. And I don't know if our friend David is on here or not, but we typically have our good friend David out of Australia that tunes in and engages with us as well. So anyway, thank you all. We're thrilled to have you all. As I mentioned, my name is Jason Johnson, and I'm thrilled to be joined by our guest, Corey Anderson. Let me give you a little bit of background on Corey. Corey spent nearly 2 decades as an educator, beginning as a teacher and then as an administrator. He's been an assistant principal at a middle school and has served as a principal of 2 different elementary schools. Corey pioneered and started one of 2 public STEM programs in the state of Utah and helped consult with the State Office of Education on creating STEM standards for schools that would eventually be adopted by the STEM Action Center. Also, during his tenure as an elementary school principal, Corey oversaw behavior units and led his school in implementing social and emotional programs and STEM activities. In 2019, Corey joined the WhyTry team as a trainer and director of curriculum development after using its social and emotional tools for close to 10 years in his administrative duties. Welcome, Corey. Appreciate you joining me.
My pleasure. Excited to be here.
Now, I get to work closely with Corey, and it's a great joy. It's really fun to find educators that you really enjoy collaborating with, and it's been certainly an enjoyable opportunity for me. My name is Jason Johnson. I came over to the WhyTry organization about 6 years ago. My background is I'm a school psychologist, and I guess my area of specialization is the topic of resilience. I ended up getting published in a national journal on resilience, and that's kind of been my core focus professionally and personally as a school psych. And that's kind of how I ended up the WhyTry organization is that organizationally, the world of WhyTry is really focused on helping individuals develop and increase resilience. And our work, as I mentioned, goes back about 20 years, but we work primarily in the world of education and mental health, but we also do a fair amount of work in corrections, both adult and juvenile corrections. And we get brought into a lot of different areas, but we're typically teaching the skills and the sources of resilience, and teaching and providing critical social and emotional learning skills. And we have a pretty specific and organized approach to do that. And so today we're going to share a couple of hopefully ideas and strategies with you that will be helpful, that will be practical for you. And we've got some newer stuff that some of you because we have a good mix here of new friends that are on today, as well as longtime friends that are on today. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of something for everybody, because I think we've got a newer approach and toolkit that some of you that are familiar with us may not have seen. So with that, let's jump into it. Anything you want to add, Corey?
No, great.
Okay. Well, with that, I thought the way we would approach this today is a little bit of a combination of both information, kind of helping you understand our approach a little bit, as well as modeling. I'm gonna model some of our material, show you what some of that looks like in the process, and then I'm gonna throw it over to Corey when I get done for him to. He gets the fun part. He gets to introduce this I don't know what we're calling it, framework, toolkit, model, whatever you want to call it, on focusing on relationships. So to start off with, I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page, and I'm going to review for some of you and introduce for others a thing that we call the WhyTry approach. Now, WhyTry is all about teaching these critical resilience skills, these critical social and emotional skills. And we have some really useful content built around visual metaphors that assists in teaching that. But at the core of what we do, and part of what's made us, I think, really successful over the last 20 years, is we rely on this thing we refer to as the WhyTry approach. And the simplest way to understand the WhyTry approach is with a simple formula that we call the new 3 R's. And this is a foundational approach. I think you can take any curriculum or any intervention that you have to deliver and rest it on this approach that I'm going to review with you, and it will improve the delivery of that. And it certainly lies at the core of how we deliver our WhyTry material as well. And I think it's one of our most transcendent pieces. So the new 3 R's are as follows. Simplest form. First R is the R of the relationship. We are a relationship-based organization. Everything that we do is designed to build, strengthen, and improve relationships. I like to ask the question sometimes. I think I was just looking at the Zoom tools. You should have a hand raise. Yeah, we're gonna mess with the hand raise button. Raise your virtual hand. Hit the virtual hand raise button if you have had the following experience. Have you ever had the experience of having a student that would work for you when they wouldn't work for other grown-ups in the building? Raise your virtual hand if you've ever had that experience. I think I'm seeing almost every hand go up. This is, yes. Now, if you've had that experience, out of curiosity, I don't know if you've ever thought about this before, type into the chat tool, just in its most simple form, what do you think the secret was? What was your secret to getting a student to work for you when they wouldn't work for other grown-ups in the building? Oh, I love it. So many good words. Camaraderie, trust, relationship, unconditional. They knew that you cared. This is so good. This is why you're my people. This is my belief as well. This lies at the core of the WhyTry approach. The first R is the relationship. Everything we do is focused on improving the relationship. When kids feel different around us, they respond different to us. And that all starts with the relationship. The second R, oh, I love it. Cultural responsive teaching. Great ideas here. The second R is the R of relevance. Now, relevance involves how we deliver our message. Relevance is all about helping kids see how our material applies to their life. And it's really interesting. I didn't take a poll, but if I did, there's probably every role within education and mental health currently logged in live to this webinar. I know we have everything from classroom teachers to counselors to paraeducators to administrators to school psychs to district support, behavioral support, interventionists, and everything in between. Regardless of our title, we all have one common job or one common role. And that common role is we deliver or oversee the delivery of content. That's common to all of us. And the content exists either in the form of a curriculum or an intervention. But every day when we engage with our kids, we're delivering content to them. And our goal is that our kiddos will take that content, understand it, and apply it. That's what we want to happen. Now, that's really, really hard, obviously, in education. But one of the most foundational pieces to accomplishing that goal of helping kids connect to our content and apply it revolves around this R. It's the relevance piece. When we can help kids see how our material applies to their life, then that opens the door for them to begin to connect to it and apply it. Now, relevance takes on different looks. We look at relevance kind of in two parts. One is, am I helping my kids see how my material applies to their life? Am I helping them see a bigger picture of things? Am I helping them see how their choices today are impacting their future, how this content is going to impact their future? A principal shared this quote with us that I love. He said, sometimes we focus so much on helping students to pass a test that we fail to help them see how this subject relates to life. We know we're not just teaching to a test, we're preparing kids for life, regardless of their age. We believe that the content we're delivering is going to enrich and benefit their life somehow. So we have to help them see how that happens. One of the best ways to do this is through combining social, emotional, and learning principles with that academics. And what that can do is it helps create the relevance ties, but it also helps elevate the academics in the process. So that's the first half of relevance. The second half of relevance involves how we connect with our students. And from a relevance standpoint, I was really grateful. One of you on here mentioned the cultural piece. When it comes to what we deliver, we want to make sure we're delivering our material with both generational and cultural relevance. We want to be really considerate of who our audience is, what their background is, where they come from, and make sure that it applies across all those boards. Now, that can be really challenging, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail today on that because we're going to be focusing more on that first R, but I do want to present that to you within the model. So the WhyTry approach is you combine the relationship that you build with the relevance to your content. And when you do those two things together, the byproduct of that ends up being resilience. And resilience is all about how our kids deal with adversity. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here as well, but resilience at its basic level is a person's ability to bounce back and ultimately thrive amidst adversity. And all of our kids have whatever version of adversity and challenge in their life that they do. It could be anything from extreme trauma all the way down to just the challenges and adversity that have come from navigating life through a global pandemic the last 2 years. Whatever that adversity looks like, their relation to it and how they deal with it is their resilience. Well, all of us want our kids to be more resilient. This formula is the most basic formula that we can apply to get there. So the new 3 R's, relationship plus relevance equals resilience. Today, we're going to focus on the relationship piece, though, because it is actually the most fundamental part of resilience, and it's also the most fundamental part of our approach. And to help with that, I want to walk you through a model. Some of you may be familiar with this image. This is an image that we use when we teach. This comes directly from one of the lessons that we teach our kiddos, specifically about navigating adversity. And I want to walk you through just the first little part to kind of set the table for where we're going to go next with the discussion from Corey. But we call this the motivation formula. So if you look at this image, you'll notice there's really oh, thank you, Wendy. There's really one main unifying ingredient in this image, and it literally runs through the whole image, and it's the image of water. So let me ask you all a question about water in relation to this image. Go ahead and respond in the chat, but what do you think? Is water a good thing or a bad thing? Cast your vote. Water good or water bad? Respond in the chat. We've got I love the answers. All of you that said it depends, you are my kindred spirits, because that's always my response as well. Well, it depends. So let's explore both sides to this then, because it does depend. How could water be a bad thing? In what way could water be a bad thing? So if it depends, there you go. Hurricanes, flooding, flash flood, destruction. If it overwhelms us, covers us, fills our lungs, it could actually take away our life. There's a very destructive element to water. If any of you have ever dealt with a house flood or a community flood, you know that water has tremendous energy potential, and it can cause incredible destruction in its path. If it freezes, if it becomes contaminated, oh no, Kelly, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring up something so close to home. But yes, it is very, very destructive. Water can cause some problems. So that's the bad side. But we said that it depends. So now tell me, let's discuss the flip side. How could water be a good thing? In what ways is water a good thing? Perfect. It gives life. It's an energy source. It provides nourishment. It can help us grow. We have to have it to live. It can relax us. We can use it for transportation. We can use it for recreation. It cleanses. So you get it. So water is really interesting because it really can be either. Now, in this image, everything here is symbolic, and the water specifically represents challenges. So now let me ask you the same question about challenges that I just asked you about water. Are challenges a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think? The answer is it depends, right? So challenges can be both. We know the impact that trauma has, and we've all worked with kids, and maybe even ourselves at times have been really overwhelmed with challenges, and challenges can be destructive and have a devastating effect. But we also know that challenges do facilitate growth. All of us are who we are uniquely because of the unique challenges that we've gone through. They provide experience, development, and growth opportunity. And even if we've had challenges that we would never want to repeat again, they still give us a unique perspective and unique experience that make us who we are in this moment. And so challenges can kind of go either way as well. So the key concept that we're ultimately teaching through this, I'll give it back out, through this image, if you look all the way to the end, is that challenges, we can channel our challenges towards productivity. That's what we're ultimately teaching. Now, I'm not going to focus on the key concept here. I'm going to focus on one of the specific elements of this, and that's specifically how we can help kids better deal with some of their challenges, especially early on if they become overwhelmed. You may have noticed that early on in this image that there's a kid struggling in that pool there. That's a kid that has become overwhelmed with challenges. Now, challenges bring with them emotions, frustration, fear, anger, all of these things that make us feel a certain way. And when we become overwhelmed with the emotion and the challenge, we can wind up in a place that we refer to as the flood zone. And that kid that's struggling is a kid that hasn't been able to channel his challenges yet towards productivity. He's stuck there resting in this place we call the flood zone. Now, the flood zone is a place where we can become overwhelmed with our challenges. We typically experience less opportunity and freedom. Oftentimes, it's the path we take the path of least resistance when we're in the flood zone. We might lose self-respect. Our energy might die. It might even be a place we hurt ourselves or we hurt others. I had the great opportunity about a month ago. We had a school just north of us that brought 60 6th through 8th grade students into us to do a leadership workshop with them. And I took them through this first part of the flood zone. And I asked them pretty pointedly if they knew any fellow classmates that were in the flood zone right now. They all raised their hand. And then I asked them what the flood zone feels like to them, describe what the flood zone was. And straight from the student's mouth, they described the flood zone as feeling alone, overwhelmed, and hopeless. That was their student responses. So when we become overwhelmed and end up kind of stuck in that flood zone, those are often times where we feel alone, overwhelmed, and hopeless. And in that state, it's really hard for resilience to kick in and really kind of boost us up. So one of the very first questions when it comes to motivation and engagement involves how can we help get kids out of the flood zone? Now, by the way, these last couple years that have been unprecedented in education, we've got a really unique flood zone right now. We've got tons of students that are in the flood zone, but we also have a lot of faculty and staff that are in the flood zone as well. I've been in the flood zone multiple times over this last couple years. And so the big question is, how do you help get people out of the flood zone? You can see there's a life preserver there. That indicates that we do believe that there's some tool, some strategy, some resource we can use to try to help get people out of the flood zone. Well, Corey's going to talk a little bit more about what that is and a kind of a practical approach to that. Before he does that, though, I don't mind teasing it just a little bit. That life preserver resource is very representative of something that's very directly connected to that first R I shared with you in the new 3 R's. It's very much a relationship tool, a relationship strategy. So before I throw to Corey, I want to watch a video together with you because I think this will prepare the next part of the discussion. And this is a video many of you have probably seen before. It's maybe my favorite video in education. This is the famous TED Talk given by Rita Pearson. And she talks about the importance of relationships in education. Let's watch that together. And then I'll let Corey process it after and lead into his part of the discussion. Even if you've seen this before, see if anything new or different sticks out to you. Every time I watch it, something new sticks out to me. And really think about this concept in relation to kids or coworkers that may be struggling in the flood zone right now. So here's Rita Pearson with an incredible message on relationships. And do me a favor, after I hit play on this, if you can see and hear the video, if the audio and video is working, just raise your virtual hand to let me know that you can see it and hear it.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class. Because I am the best teacher and you are the best students, they put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and Years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
Oh, it gives me goosebumps. Just in conclusion, hopefully something stuck out to you there, and I'm going to let Corey process it if he cares to, or it can just sit with you if you'd like. The importance of relationships, but also I think the incredible reminder of why we do what we do, and through these unprecedented times where it feels like many of us and many of our kids are in the depths of that flood zone, beyond what they have before. If we can tap back into that somehow and find some life preserver through that, we can reconnect to that. So Corey, you're up. I'll stop my share.
Awesome. Welcome. Thanks, Jason. Jason has, for those who are repeat visitors to these webinars, you've heard Jason get on here and facilitate some great dialogues with professionals from around the country. And usually he facilitates it. But it's great to hear Jason share his own thoughts and teaching about all of this. He's great at it. So thanks, Jason. That Rita Pearson video is such a great moving video. I think as educators, we can all relate to it in different ways. And it's very moving. And I noticed some of your comments coming through just as you watch it. And I think we all have different takeaways from it as you listen to it. I really would love to share a little bit more about it. We're going to talk a little bit more about it in a moment, but we've been focusing on relationships here and on the importance of it. Stated a lot. The bottom line is that when it comes to education and our organizations that we work in, relationships affect everything, right? Think about that for a moment. It affects student engagement and how much they will interact with us as we provide and facilitate lessons. It affects their academic performance and impacts their emotional states and how they feel in school, whether they're safe. And then for you, for professionals, that affects you and your job satisfaction, your overall school climate, your culture. Think about that for a moment. In fact, I want you to think about this question specifically. How are relationships having an effect on your school culture? Or if you're not representing a school, even the organization you work with, how do relationships, how are they currently impacting your organization or school culture? Maybe some of you would even share, maybe not, and that's totally fine. But think about the relationships between students and the professionals with each other, right? it really does impact the overall mental health and the overall well-being of everybody who is engaging with one another. So relationships is key for us to be able to, be successful at what we are trying to accomplish, right? Thank you. Some people have shared in there or being vulnerable. I appreciate that. Yeah, it gets super thin, right? You get stretched. It's hard to put that at the forefront. That can be tough. Thank you. I'm just kind of processing some of these comments that are coming through. Well, regardless, we've talked about relationships a lot, right? And in education, I learned about the importance of relationships almost from the get-go in my undergrad program. And it's continued through as in my other schooling, as a teacher, as an administrator. It feels like we talk about relationships a lot. But I think sometimes we miss the boat in the sense that, we hear about the importance of relationships with students, but something, at least from an administrator, that I need to remember is that not everyone is equally skilled at developing those relationships. Rita Pearson, I mean, you can tell from watching that video, she was probably a natural, right? She had the right disposition and the right personality to just reach out and build relationships, but not necessarily everybody is great at it. And I think that educators on the whole, we have the ability to build relationships, strong relationships with a lot of our students. However, being able to build the right relationship with every single student, that's hard to do. That takes some very intentional skill and focus to be able to build that type of relationship with every single one. And if you reflect back on what Jason shared with the motivation formula, a lot of those students who are in the flood zone, they are students that are dealing with a lot of trauma. They're dealing with challenges that make them feel overwhelmed and alone. And so then this lifeline, what can we do to help pull those kids out of the flood zone? Well, it is based in relationship, but it's something even more, something we feel like we've defined in a way that any educator could take this tool and apply it and improve their relationships with all of their students. And even more specifically, with those that are struggling and are in the flood zone. And so we have a professional development tool that we love to share. It's a part of our programs, our WhyTry program, our Resilience for Youth. And we even have a separate program we'll be introducing today. But as participants in this webinar, we're even going to give you some of that information, even if you don't currently have access to those other programs. And it really can be the key to motivating students, helping them with trauma, really helping them out of that flood zone. And we call it the surrendering the one-up relationship. To be able to help others around us that are overwhelmed with their challenges, that are dealing with those feelings of fear, frustration, anger, and feel like they are overwhelmed and they are just surviving on a day-to-day basis. We believe we have to surrender the one up to those students in order to help them out of the flood zone and build a relationship where they have the trust and they're willing to engage with us, be vulnerable, and listen to what we have to share. So what is the surrendering the one up relationship? Well, it's a set of specific strategies and activities that help educators build authentic, unconditional relationships. It helps students feel understood, valued, and safe. You can see that written here. But let's dig a little deeper. This term, surrendering the one up, dissect that for a moment, and let's analyze what's going on here. Think about that phrase, one-up relationship. What is a one-up relationship? Well, in this regard, a one-up relationship for a student is any relationship or situation where a student feels that they either have less value or importance than the other person, or perceive they have less value. Even if it's not true, they may even perceive that they have less value in the eyes of that adult, even compared to other students. And often as educators, we are in a one-up position on our students because of our title and position, and because of other factors as well. And that difference, that one up communicates an imbalance of value in that relationship, despite how we actually feel. So students come into this where they feel like they're not quite on the same level as we are. And there's a lot of things that contribute to that one-up relationship, that contribute to that gap. Maybe some of you can think of some of those and put it in the chat window. What are some of the factors that create distance, that create a one-up between us and the students we're working with? Title alone can do it, because they know that we're either the teacher or the administrator or whatever position, and they are a student. Therefore, there is something else. Age and experience, right? We have life experience. We have age. We're older than they are. Therefore, we're one up, right? That might be it. Definitely. Others, experiences they may have had with other adults could also contribute to that one up, where they feel like they are less than. I love that some of you are bringing up even physical characteristics can add to that, where they feel insecure and feel like the adult has more there that's one up. Tone and our interaction. Thank you. These are great. The way we phrase things, you're in big trouble now, how we speak to them. There could be cultural issues here that lead to that gap. Yeah. And it's important to recognize that the system itself sets it up this way. I mean, these kids are walking into buildings that are run by adults. They're walking into our classrooms, into our offices. We hold all of the power. Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Great example. We're the ones who give grades. We have to make phone calls. We decide what they teach. We decide how they learn. All of this can contribute to that one-up relationship. Now, it doesn't necessarily mirror how we feel about them, because all of us got into this for reasons where we sincerely want to help these students, and specifically these students who are in the flood zone. That one-up relationship where they have experienced trauma, they've probably had moments where they've developed distrust or had experiences with other adults where it's hard for them to trust any adult, right? Those students, they need more help than anybody else. And it's even more imperative to learn how to surrender that one-up relationship. So how do we do that? What does that mean exactly? How do we surrender and make that gap not as big? How do we lessen that gap so that they truly learn that, hey, you are just as important as I am. And in fact, I'm here for you, right? Like, you're not here for me to help me do my job. I am here for you. How do we do that? How do we communicate? How do we surrender? Well, let me be clear. Surrendering means one thing and not the other. So I may have gone to the wrong slide. Let me back up one. I think I had a slide here on surrendering. I want to point out really quickly. This is maybe out of order. Surrender. Let me just clarify one thing here. So surrendering does not mean that we eliminate rules, we eliminate boundaries, expectations, accountability. It does mean, however, that we recognize this gap and that we are willing to do simple, small things in favor of giving students voice, choice. We are willing to be vulnerable with students, and we really make their well-being our focus and what we're trying to do. So when we teach this principle of surrendering the one-up, what we do is we explain that surrendering the one-up really is a series of things we consistently do over time to help students feel, believe, and know that we care about them regardless of everything else. And we found that all of our strategies and activities that we do, they typically fall into three categories. Our strategies and activities usually help us create student connection. So they're things we do to connect with our students and to help our students connect with each other. There are strategies and activities that we do that facilitate what we call student empowerment. This means giving students voice and choice. And there are a lot of great examples of this, simple examples where we empower them and give them an opportunity to have a voice and choice throughout their school day, regarding how things run, to what they learn, to what rules look like, to even consequences. And then the third category of strategies and activities fall under strategies that are student-centered. So the great part about this is that a lot of these strategies and activities are probably things that you have done, a number of them in your own practice. Jason asked you earlier if you ever have had a student that you have connected with that you've been able to get through to and others have struggled. And he asked, what did you do with that student? And you guys started naming some great examples that actually fall into these categories here. And if we dug even deeper and said, well, how did you do that? I think you would find that a lot of what you do fall into these strategies and activities. So, really what surrendering the one-up is it really comes down to this: consistently communicating to a student. Oops, I went too far, sorry. Consistently communicating to a student that they have value and worth regardless of whether they're successful, whether there's failures, whether they even have behaviors. You see a lot of the students in schools that have good relationships. They're the ones that, they navigate school successfully. They're good. They perform well academically. They usually don't have behavioral challenges. It's easier to form relationships with those students. But unfortunately, those that struggle in school or have behaviors, they start to notice that, their interactions with some of the adults in those schools, they're not quite the same as the interactions that those adults have with the students that are successful in school. And they start to internalize that, and they start to think, my value and worth at school is kind of attached to whether or not I'm successful in school. And that stands in the way, right? That contributes to that one up. And so really these strategies in our activities are an effort at communicating to students that, guess what, I care about you, and you have value and worth, no matter what, right? And that's really what it's about. So what does that look like? Well, one of the really cool things that we have developed is a packet of strategies and activities. And, this comes from a lot of sources. Some of them are from some of the people we have partnered with over these last 20 years. This strategies and activities packet is called Surrendering the One-Up Activities and Strategies for Educators. This goes through and lists over 50 strategies and activities that we do when working with students, right? That are just simple things we can do to surrender the one-up. And we are going to provide this for you for attending this webinar today. At the end, Jason will share with you how you can get your hands on this packet, which is awesome because this is usually a part of one of our programs that's separate. But we want to share that with you today because we know, number one, relationships are important, but it's not always easy. And so we want to give you some real practical ideas. I know you would be able to identify some things that you have done. Let me share one really quick one that I do. And I did as an administrator. So as an administrator, there's even another level of being one up, right? Because now I'm the principal, I'm the administrator, and I have to, work through investigations and discipline. And I remember when I first became a principal and I started sharing with people that I had become an administrator, I was an elementary school principal. And as I would talk to them about that, I would see them in a store or, somewhere out in public, they would always say to me, oh, that's really cool. And they would turn to their child that was with them And they would say, oh, well, you never go to the principal's office, right? You never get sent to the principal's office. And I started to get this idea that, wow, the principal's office kind of has this negative connotation to it, right? Like that's a bad place to go. And I thought, I don't want it to be like that. And as I started my job, I started to realize, yeah, the principal's office, it kind of was this interrogation room, right? If a student gets in trouble, you go to the principal's office, and it's like walking into those hot lights that you see in movies when you go into, get questioned by some police officer or detective. It's like, that is not the type of relationship I want with students. The last thing I need to do is add to that one-up relationship. And so at that moment, I realized my office was never going to be an interrogation room. And instead, when I had to work through situations with students, I would try to find equal ground to work with them, whether that was sitting around a kidney table, finding a wall and sitting side by side with them, even sitting down in the hall next to them and processing things. The last thing I wanted to do was feel like they were, being interrogated by this man that was, decades older than them and trying to intimidate them. Just one example of what we can do. Small, right? Simple. And yet it can actually go a long way to building relationships. So you're going to see a lot of examples as you look through this packet. Now, the last thing I want to share with you today, that's actually one of the main reasons we're here, and stick with this. This is a great thing. I would imagine that there are a number of you in this training, and we have seen this throughout all of our trainings that we do. And in this webinar, this is a webinar, I would imagine there's a number of you that are thinking, if all of my colleagues could like grab a hold of this idea of relationships and surrendering the one up, that would be very powerful. And we have found that one of the things that stands in the way of organizations moving forward is this idea of collectively everybody knowing what it means to surrender the one up. And so what we've developed is what we call a toolkit for teaching and studying surrendering the one up as an organization. And this toolkit includes an initial training where we can come and deliver an initial training to an organization, or even the leadership of that school or organization can deliver this initial training where it's about 2.5 to 3 hours long, where we dive deep into what it means to surrender the one up. We even have a metaphor that we've developed that goes along with it. And we really dive deep into what it looks like and to developing strategies and activities that can be put into practice. And then as a part of this toolkit, we have developed a series of workshops that the leadership team of that school will use to continue to build understanding about how to work with students in both building the surrendering the one up idea, as well as just overall understanding where their students are coming from. And these workshops have been built for the leadership team to grab hold of and deliver to their organization over the course of 1 to 2 years, either in faculty meetings or during professional development. And the great thing about these workshops is that they're completely built for the leadership team already, right? They come in here and it is constructed for them, all the way from the readings they will need, to the discussion questions, to the activities they will do, to the videos they will show. These workshops are pre-constructed because, of course, time is one of the toughest things. And so this toolkit provides for a leadership team or an administrator everything they would need, an initial training, as well as workshops for continuing the conversation around building relationships with students and learning all about surrendering the one up. So this could be what your organization is looking for. And if you think it is, Jason will give you some information on how you can, ask about that. But at the very, very least, today, we want to make sure that, number one, you have, almost a phrase that you can use and start putting into practice with regards to how do we build relationships? How do we work with students who are struggling or are in the flood zone, step one, surrender the one up. And then number two, we want to provide you with this resource that give you over 50 practical strategies on how to do that. And then if you think this is something your organization could benefit from, we possibly could help you there as well. So Jason, I'll turn the time back over to you just to share those thoughts.
Awesome. Thank you. Great job, Corey. All right. So I'm going to give you information on how to get that packet of strategies. And I'm also going to make somewhat of a, I don't think it's selfish, somewhat of a personal request as well. So I'm going to share a screen with you here. And on this screen, you can see there's a QR code, and then there's also mine and Corey's email address. If you're interested in getting those, getting that packet of strategies, you can point your camera at that QR code, and it will direct you to a web page where you put in your information, and then we'll send you instructions on how to access that packet of 50 plus strategies. Really handy document. This is stuff that we're really excited to share. Here's the semi-personal request for you. So this has been really fun. I've seen some names on here that I know I've been with on previous webinars or previous trainings, and it's super, super fun to see you all. And I consider all of you my friends. We've got a great community on here. My personal request is this. If you've done something in your own practice, or you've seen something done, I'll give you E-Man, I'll give you a response to that in just a second. If you've done something in your own practice or in your own school, or you've seen a colleague do something that you feel like was particularly effective in helping students feel value or worth, Corey or I would love to hear about it. Please, please don't hesitate to shoot us an email. The second request that I'm going to make is, I see some names on here that I haven't seen for a while. It's kind of like when you're a teacher and you have a student come back that you haven't seen for a minute, and you're just excited to be with somebody that you spent time with before. If you've been through one of these before, you've been to a training with Corey or I, and you feel the inclination at all just to reach out, say hello, see how we're doing, send a message. I'd love to hear from you. Personally, I'm guessing Corey would be great with that as well. I don't mind overflowing both of our email boxes, but we would love to hear from you. Anyway, to access that, to get instructions on how to access that packet, use the QR code. Turn on your camera, point it at the QR code, and it will bring up a link for a website. If your camera is not working with the QR code, then you can use this link here. You can go to whytry.org/schedule-demo. And what you can do, oh, I did that wrong. There shouldn't be an X at the beginning of it. What you can do, there you go, is put that into your web browser, and just in the response on that, just say you were in the webinar today and you're interested in getting access to that document full of strategies. And these are things that we go out regularly and train on. It's really good content there. Really excited that our founders, Christian and Hans, were willing to share that document with all of you. So again, feel free to hit the QR code for information on accessing that document. And then if you're willing, if you've done anything cool that you feel like has really effectively helped kids feel value and worth, tell us about it. I would love to hear about it, and I would love to shout some of you out in a future webinar. Next week, we're going to have our webinar on Wednesday instead of Thursday. We've got 2 guests from the East Coast area. They are experts at working with students that may be traditionally considered as challenging students. They've got some experience in regular ed and alt ed, and they're going to give some real great ideas and experience about helping kids be resilient, that I think all of us, regardless of where we're working at, can benefit from. So with that, I don't think I have anything else. Just a huge thank you to all of you.